Megan Basham's book, Shepherds for Sale, is causing quite a commotion. It's by now a #1 New York Times bestseller, and everybody seems to have an opinion on it, including the Dispatch writer Kevin Williamson, who formerly wrote, I believe, for National Review. Kevin Williamson is something of an iconoclast. He loves to charge in, guns blazing, and he has done just that in a Dispatch review of Megan Basham's Shepherds for Sale. The title of Kevin Williamson's review that just dropped a few days ago is Bearing False Witness. And then the subtitle is this is not a glancing subtitle. Megan Basham's Shepherds for Sale is not a smart book. As I said, this was published August 18, 2024. The website informs me that it was updated August 19, 2024. I wanted to comment on this book review, which is an unusual thing to do. Book reviews are oftentimes that which a certain type of reader wants to encounter, and then lots of other readers, when they're in a journal or a magazine or something like that, they'll pass over it. But book reviews are actually where a lot of the intellectual culture surrounding us is sorted out. Book reviews can be very important. They're certainly important to specialists in disciplines. I read book reviews on a regular basis. This book review by Kevin Williamson for the Dispatch has the rare privilege of being a book review, again, that deserves its very own treatment, because this is, without any exception, the single worst book review I have ever read in my years on planet Earth. Kevin Williamson has been beyond unfair to Megan Basham, and that's what we're going to cover today in this particular episode of Grace and Truth. Welcome to Grace and Truth. My name is Owen Strachan, and I will be your host. Please subscribe to this podcast, review this podcast, generally share word about this podcast from the hilltops and the dales of all your surrounding environment. We so appreciate our listeners. I so appreciate my producer, Misty, who's been working with me through these very interesting summer months. We are almost at their end, and I will soon be in an office. But until then, we press on. We need to talk about this book review. I'm not a shill for Megan Basham. This isn't an example of what they call white knighting. This is just an example of somebody entering into a debate. Now, full disclosure, I am reading the book Shepherds for Sale. Lots of you out there are as well. I have not been able to finish it yet. I'm working my way through it slowly and carefully because it is an estimable book. It deserves a good deal of attention. And here's something to say. Readers should not mistake me, listeners should not mistake me for thinking that, for making the claim that Megan Basham deserves no engagement on her book. Every author does. For example, 3 years ago, this season, July, August 2021, I published a book entitled Christianity and Wokeness. It got a fair bit of positive press. It got some, in-between press, and it got some pretty fierce criticism. And looking back, I don't think that criticism part was unfair. I don't think all of it, certainly some of it was, but I think it is just that an author who writes a consequential book will get engagement, applause, affirmation, pushback, criticism. I have a full category for that as somebody who's published not only the Wokeness book, but a number of other books. That's part of the game. We actually, as Christians, should be those who support a genuine exchange of views and who want people to debate ideas and who want our own work tested and sifted. And I am sure, from what I know of Megan Basham, that is true of her. She has not shown herself to be a shy presence in the room, a wilting flower. She's come out with this book, Shepherds for Sale, just recently. It's a #1 New York Times bestseller, to repeat that. So lots of people are clearly reading it and engaging it from all sorts of angles. And in my view, that is fair game. I am not here to say, though I am a friend of Basham's and very much appreciate what she does, I'm not here to say any critique of her work is out of bounds. It is not. But here's the deal. What Kevin Williamson has done in his Dispatch article, Bearing False Witness, is not just offer some very deeply intellectual points of thought. He has crossed the line. He has absolutely crossed the line. And so it is worthwhile that we engage this review in this brief episode of Grace and Truth, because I wanted to dip my oar into this conversation, even though I haven't finished the book. More to come in that respect, I'm sure, in the future, I'm hoping. But this actually provides us a really nice flashpoint, a really nice opportunity in terms of sifting out where evangelicalism is post-wokeness, post-COVID, post-late stages of the sexual revolution, post-evangelicals for Harris, these kind of pushes that are occurring. I mean, you miss a week, you miss a month in the evangelical news cycle today, and it feels like you've missed 5 years. So this is a worthy stopping point to say, let's engage some of the criticism that Basham is receiving, because in this case, we're going to see that the fierceness of this review tells us something very important. And what it tells us, I'll just give you the thesis here from the outset, is that this conversation has jumped the tracks. And sadly, for some, as practiced by some writers and those engaging it, it's not a fair conversation. It's gone ad hominem. Williamson has absolutely gone ad hominem. So let me give you a few points of thought regarding Kevin Williamson's dispatch review of Megan Basham's Shepherds for Sale. First, this review is an assault on basic human decency. It's an assault on basic human decency. I'm going to quote a number of quotations from Williamson's dispatch book review. As a Catholic, he writes, I suppose I should try harder not to enjoy Protestant factional infighting as much as I do. But every time I read something as bog-bottom dumb as Megan Basham's excruciatingly imbecilic new book, Shepherds for Sale, so on, I'm reminded of the poetic justice arising from American-style choose-your-own-adventure theology and exegesis. There never was a better advertisement for the benefits of maintaining a magisterium. I'm going to comment on this paragraph I just read. Can't believe it. I just read it out loud. More comment to follow. Let's continue. Let's quote Williamson more. I want you to hear from him. If you were in the market for an argument that Trump's approach to immigration is the genuinely Christian one, then this is the book for you. Shepherds for Sale. If, on the other hand, Williamson writes, you are not a self-moronizing cretin, maybe try Pope John Paul II. Okay, that's another fairly strong dose of the Tylenol here this morning. Let's continue. Williamson writes, reviewing a book like this is like trying to argue with an avalanche of stupidity and error, to be sure, but an avalanche all the same. I have the same problem with this book I had in reviewing Alyssa Court's similarly idiotic Bootstrap. The author can make enough errors in a dozen words that the critic needs 400 words to correct them. That's end of quotation. Quick comment there. I agree with you, Kevin Williamson, because you, in your book review, so-called, have made enough errors that it deserves its very own podcast episode, which I am granting you and the world right now. Let's continue with some more quotes from Williamson. Her politics, Basham's politics, Williamson writes, are as illiterate as her religion. Hey, let me jump out of this discussion for just a second and inform you of something that's pretty important for you to consider. Economists are warning us about massive tax hikes that could hit your IRA and your 401k hard. It's hard to say these words, isn't it? With inflation rising and global uncertainty, it's no wonder central banks and many Americans are turning to gold. Proverbs 21:20 reminds us to preserve what we've built. If you haven't considered gold yet, now's the time. Reach out to Priority Gold to see how they can help you diversify with physical gold and silver. Text GOLDEN to 800-405-GOLD for a free gold info guide and see if you qualify for free shipping and storage. Don't wait. Get your portfolio working for you while the market is golden. Text GOLDEN to 800-405-GOLD to learn more. That's text GOLDEN to 800-405-GOLD. Now let's jump back into our conversation. Continuing on, Williamson writes, you get the same thing in every infuriatingly stupid chapter. Continuing on, Williamson writes, contempt for the ideas one is writing about is almost always a disability for a writer. Hello, irony. But Basham has something worse, contempt to which she is not intellectually entitled. For those of you who are not watching this on YouTube, you're missing my facial reactions because I can't conceive that Kevin Williamson thought that this level of contempt was okay for a review. And I don't know who his editor or editors are or were, but I can't believe they published this. I don't mean because the dispatch is on the other side of me and Basham on some critical issues. I mean, because this is, again, below standards of basic human decency. This should not be published by any outlet anywhere, and yet it was. We'll come back to this in a minute. Final quotation. Williamson writes, but the characterization wasn't incidental, wasn't creative. This is about J.D. Greer, as represented by Basham, and didn't make the reading any more enjoyable, alas. It's just bull blank from a bull blank artist and a second-rate bull blank artist at that. Bull blank from a bull blank artist, and a second-rate bull blank artist at that. I am bleeping out the swear words written by Williamson in his book review of Megan Basham's Shepherds for Sale. Okay, well, that was informative. That was shocking. I'm going to just run back through this now with some running commentary, not trying to give you the whole context of the quotations. I was trying to do that, honestly, as an exercise in fairness, because when you engage someone's work, you should treat their own words. You should deal with their own words. You shouldn't just summarize and critique or engage. You should let readers, at least to a degree, hear from the author themselves. This is what I have trained students to do in the classroom, the college classroom, and the seminary classroom for about 15 years now. It's what I did in a PhD, master's, and baccalaureate program. So these are the basics of book reviews and engaging other authors. I cannot fathom how Kevin Williamson thought it was okay to write phrases like bog, bottom, dumb to describe Megan Basham's book, excruciatingly imbecilic. If you're not a self-moralizing cretin, then you could read Catholic writing. But if you are a self-moralizing cretin, you would read Megan Basham's book. Shepherds for Sale, according to Williamson, has an avalanche of stupidity and error. Megan Basham's politics are illiterate. Every chapter is infuriatingly stupid. Kevin Williamson's contempt for the ideas he is writing about apparently is not a disability. He says almost always a disability. But Basham has something worse, according to him, contempt to which she is not intellectually entitled. I'm going to stop there. How does an adult man think it is okay to talk to an adult woman like this in public? Who put Kevin Williamson on the throne of the universe and has enabled him to write such anti-human and anti-woman words as this? Megan Basham has put out a body of ideas and a body of criticism of recent evangelical trends that once again deserves engagement. But Megan Basham, by any light, is definitely intellectually entitled to her case. She does not deserve contempt from Kevin Williamson because she is not intellectually entitled. She is a very smart woman. She's an excellent writer. She is a very gifted communicator. How Kevin Williamson thinks it is okay to speak like this of somebody he disagrees with is beyond me. And I don't mean that in terms of talking about fellow evangelicals. The standard for us has to be the highest. But I'm talking about somebody who is at least at some level religious. He's a self-professed Catholic. So there's some kind of moral standard to which he's supposed to live, subscribe. But even beyond religion, just human beings. Even when we disagree in the strongest and most severe terms over ideas, we should not talk about one another in these ways. We should not review one another's books, at least outside of, rare exceptions. We should not review one another's work in these kind of terms. Bog, bottom, dumb. The podcaster Mike Cosper, who's known for that Mars Hill podcast he did, praised in a tweet, an X post, this language, specifically the phrase bog, bottom, dumb. He was gleeful about it and said he was adding it to his list of terms. He loved it and said that Kevin Williamson, in giving us such a term as bog, bottom, dumb, woke up and chose violence. And this leads me to my second response to Kevin Williamson's shameful review of Megan Basham's book. The Norman Mailer connection is deeply disturbing. The Norman Mailer connection in this review by Williamson really disturbs me. I'll connect that back to Cosper in just a moment. Let me again quote, in an attempt at fairness, Williamson's own paragraph that involves Norman Mailer. There's a story about William F. Buckley Jr. sending a copy of his book, The Unmaking of a Mayor, to Norman Mailer, who, being an egomaniac and famously so, immediately turned to the index to see if he had been mentioned there, and what he found in the M section was Buckley's handwriting, Hi, Norman. I will admit, Williamson writes, to sometimes turning first to the index of a book I've been asked to review, and yes, checking to see whether I am cited or if any of my friends and colleagues are. I'm not there, parentheses. no surprise. End quotation. I am again just left nearly speechless, not quite speechless, but nearly so, at why Kevin Williamson thought this was good and appropriate to put into public record as a statement about Basham, her book, and himself. It's fascinating to me that he identifies Norman Mailer as an egomaniac, because that is exactly what this paragraph that I just read smacks of. It smacks of self-centeredness in a noxious degree. You're telling us that you turn to the index of shepherds for sale to see whether you are cited, and you're not there, and you think it worthy of our time to tell us this? What does this have to do with you? You're not directly involved in this conversation. Some of Williamson's colleagues and friends may be David French and others who write for the Dispatch. I understand that, but Kevin Williamson isn't trafficking closely in the evangelical conversation over wokeness and such matters. Why would he be cited here? And why would he feel the need to tell us that he is not cited there? This is just narcissism of a shocking degree for an author, and a reputable author like Kevin Williamson. I've read him for years and definitely do not agree with everything he writes, have some serious disagreements with him, but on occasion, man, his blade has cut deep and cut sharp. I mean, he's a thinker, he's a writer, he's talented, and that bears saying. See, here again is me attempting to do, not perfectly, certainly, but me attempting to do what is only right. When you engage somebody intellectually, you try to show that they're actually not a complete imbecile. They're actually not stupid. There's a reason why you would engage their ideas and take them seriously, even if you disagree with them strenuously. And we just have to have a moment here where we say, in the evangelical world and then cultural debate and where we are as a society, this is a very bad place to be when we are going ad hominem against other people. And when we are making book reviews about ourselves, we are in the lowest of the low place. We couldn't be in a worse spot in intellectual terms, because we have to not make debate about ideas ad hominem against the person. We have to make it about the ideas. And then we have to not make the conversation furthermore about ourselves. Because whatever you think of Megan Basham's Shepherds for Sale, whether you strongly agree and disagree in different places, or strongly disagree with Megan Basham, this is not about, first and foremost, you and me. This is about ideas. This is about theology. This is about trends in evangelicalism. It's not about us. So to go ad hominem and then to do the mirror opposite of that, and then to go into the self and make it about the self, really disturbs me and troubles me and shocks me, because at least at some level, Kevin Williamson has been identified on the right or the conservative end of the spectrum. And this is not fair play among conservatives. And this is not adult behavior. This is not what we do when we debate ideas and review books. It's extremely troubling to me that Norman Mailer was referenced here. I'm not going to say that Kevin Williamson cites Norman Mailer because of Mailer's violence against women. I'm guessing he didn't. And I don't think that when Mike Cosper praised Williamson to the skies and said that Williamson, quote, chose violence, end quote, that Cosper was thinking of violence in physical terms against Megan Basham. I don't think either man was likely, premeditating assault on her in a physical way or calling for that. However, Norman Mailer in November 1960, in probably the most famous event of his tumultuous and turbulent life, stabbed his wife, Adele Morales, and nearly killed her. Norman Mailer was not just kind of a chauvinist around the edges. Norman Mailer was a misogynist. Norman Mailer was disgusting against women. I'm not saying that Norman Mailer should not ever be engaged or cited, but this is a very curious person to cite in a review in which the author, Kevin Williamson, calls Megan Basham's book Excruciatingly Imbecilic, Bog-Bottom Dumb, an avalanche of stupidity and error, says that she is not intellectually entitled to the contempt she shows for those on the evangelical left. What I'm trying to say more directly is I fear that Kevin Williamson is very much in a Mailer-esque vein in this book review, so-called. He is treating Megan Basham in as evil a fashion, gross a fashion, as Norman Mailer was known to treat women. And that is terrible to read about. I'm not going to be mistaken for a secular feminist or something like this. I am in no danger of being classed among that crowd. But we need very much, as adult men, I repeat myself, of whatever worldview or religion or system, to engage women as if they have human dignity, as if they are image bearers, and dare I say, as if they are intellectually very much credible and at our level, and may even have gotten the best of us. Absolutely, that happens. And so the level of misogyny and attack in this review is anti-woman. And I want to encourage any editor at the Dispatch, anyone associated with the Dispatch, anyone who writes for the Dispatch, whether you agree with Basham or me in the slightest, if you have conscience, if you have a shred of operating conscience, may I encourage you to reach out to the staff there and register concern, or even register public concern with the Dispatch publishing this piece, not because it disagrees with Basham's ideas, but because, again, of the absolutely ad hominem, nature of Williamson's critique of Megan Basham. I'm just going to repeat myself. Megan Basham not only is not stupid, but is one of the brightest lights going, is one of the most thoughtful people I know, is one of the best voices for biblical Christianity in our time. For her to be treated in this way, I don't remember seeing anything quite like this. And again, that's why my brain goes back to this connection that Williamson himself raises right off the bat in his book review of Basham's book, this connection to Norman Mailer, who was honestly a misogynist of the first order. And what I'm seeing in this Dispatch review is just that. And that's very strange to me, because the critique that people associated with the Dispatch would often make about conservative evangelicals is that we are not sufficiently attuned to women's voices and the women's cause. And if we promote complementarity or patriarchy, then we are very much a part of this problem that causes people to hate Republicans or hate conservatives or hate evangelicals. So what is needed, of course, is more the liberation of women from Christian oppression and complementarian savagery, and all of that is bad. I don't know where Kevin Williamson himself is on all of that, but that is the kind of approach that the Dispatch would be known for. It would be known for critiquing the conservative evangelical right on gender roles and that sort of thing. And here is an example with Kevin Williamson and then also Mike Cosper joining in, of men talking about women in a shameful way. Hey, let's jump out of this conversation for just a minute. Some of you have heard the famous quotation from Kamala Harris that we should face the future looking at what can be unburdened by what has been. I have no idea what that actually means, but you've heard it and I've heard it, and we know that there is a lot of craziness in our time. With the volatility from this election and our national debt just breaking $35 trillion for the first time ever, there's never been a better time than now to consider physical gold or silver as a way to protect your savings. I'm concerned that if this election goes sideways, things are going to get even worse. The good news is that there is something you can do now ahead of whatever future chaos might be coming. Wealth Protection Research has found a gold partner in Sasco Gold that specializes in helping everyday Americans protect their retirement accounts like 401ks, IRAs, or TSPs using a loophole that allows them to convert into physical gold or silver tax and penalty free. Text the word TRUTH to 76626 to learn more. That's right. You can break free from your captive retirement account and enjoy the peace of mind knowing your retirement savings is now stored in physical gold and silver that you control. If you're interested in learning the truth about how you can protect your retirement with gold and silver, you can get a free gold investment kit that explains it all from Sasco Gold just by texting TRUTH to 76626. Drew from Sasco is standing by, waiting to help my listeners of Grace and Truth. Just text truth to 76626 and tell Drew that Owen Strachan sent you. For your free gold investment kit, text truth to 76626 now. Let's dive back into our discussion. I don't have much more to say on that. I'm happy to put it on record. I wonder if the reference to Norman Mailer on Williamson's part was a psychological tell, even at the subconscious level. I'll leave it there. The third response I would offer to Kevin Williamson is this. He misses the mark in his criticisms. He misses the mark in his criticisms of Megan Basham. You scarcely can get to actual arguments in Williamson's piece because you have to wade through the thicket of assaultive language against this woman. I don't mean physical, but just slanderous and shameful language. But Williamson does critique Basham in some argumentative terms. He argues that Basham has a kind of crazy conspiracy theory level connection of Soros money to the project, to influence evangelical institutions leftward. And basically what Williamson does is ridicule Basham for arguing that George Soros and others are pouring money into the effort to push evangelicalism leftward. Williamson says this, for example. What she does, Basham does, is the usual thing you see in second-rate right-wing outlets such as the Daily Wire, her online home, and Breitbart, the generally incompetent journalism, in air quotes, of which she takes some pains to defend, which is to construct one of those cop show murder walls with the red string connecting this and that. Soros gave money to this group, which gave a grant to that group, which did a project in partnership with this group, which has a board member who previously served with that other group, etc. Then Williamson concedes this. This is a pretty big concession, by the way, given what he's arguing here. There isn't any question that Soros and his Open Society project hope to influence prominent institutions, including conservative-leaning churches and religious associations. Soros is engaged in a social change project, and that is what social change projects do. His ends are not generally ends that I share, but that doesn't make it nefarious. My head spins once more. I've got a lot of head spinning going on today, clearly. Soros is definitely engaging in a social change project. Yes, Kevin Williamson. And from Basham's worldview and mine, the worldview we share, to push evangelicals away from what we understand to be biblical truth, grounded in the solid rock of the proclamation of Almighty God. Yes, that is a nefarious project. If you are trying to liberalize evangelicalism, that is not a positive reality. And if you are doing that through an arrangement that is very hard to trace, that takes work to uncover, yes, that is not an above board project. No, Soros has not come out and said these things, at least in a number of places. He's doing this work to influence evangelicalism leftward very quietly. But thankfully, Megan Basham, who is a skilled journalist, and others have done careful work, detailed work, painstaking work, and they have shown that there definitely is leftist influence in conservative evangelicalism. That's what the book is showing in spades. I haven't gotten to the end, so I can't comment on the whole scope of Basham's case, but already she has scored many points, and I am about probably 20 to 30% into the book at this time. My breath has been taken away numerous times because there definitely is deleterious influence of the left in conservative evangelical institutions. The alternative to that is not to get red-faced and angry and shouty and listen to no one and abandon the fruits of the Spirit and attack your enemies and hate your enemies and these sorts of things. That's not where I would push people. I've tried to make that case on this very podcast, but there is real work to do for balanced, gracious, God-centered Christians to counter leftward influence, which is definitely pushing people away from sound biblical doctrine. There's some noise in the background here. We're going to keep rolling on with it. So, a strange way to criticize Basham, because Williamson basically says, in so many words, Williamson says Basham is kind of this operating at this crazy conspiracy theory level, with all the red dots on the police wall connecting the causes. But then he is going on to say Soros definitely is engaging in social change. So, buddy, you can't have it both ways. What Soros is doing is nefarious, should be exposed, and should be opposed in no uncertain terms. I praise God so far that Megan Basham is doing just that work. In a similar way, Kevin Williamson, moving on to a different issue we'll just cover very quickly, argues basically that Megan Basham doesn't understand racial disparities, doesn't understand Thomas Sowell's discrimination and disparities work, and insults her intelligence there and her reading level. Again, I have no idea why he would do that. He definitely seems to read Megan Basham as his intellectual inferior. I mean, he makes it as clear as a bell. And by extension, the Dispatch does as well. Megan Basham is not intellectually up to the task, is the key argument of this book review. This book review is shameful, as I have said in no uncertain terms. But here's the thing. Megan Basham actually doesn't boggle racial disparities. She understands them rightly. She writes about them rightly. The left does read racial disparities as evidence of systemic injustice. Basham is right to criticize that thesis. Sowell shows us that racial disparities could be evidence of genuine injustice. Yes, no one's going to say that's never the case. Sowell also shows us that there are often complex factors behind disparities among racial groups. And so Sowell's work is really important in trying to get a balanced understanding of racial disparities. But suffice it to say that Basham is on completely sound and solid ground in opposing the idea, according to the DEI industry, diversity, equity, inclusion, which is just classic wokeness in action. She is right to oppose the idea that racial disparities in different statistical categories show automatic racial discrimination. You have to work more carefully than that. Furthermore, Basham is not, as I understand her case, arguing that there never is a racial disparity that needs to be cleared up. Williamson points to how Jews were helped, for example, in college applications as admissions policies were genuinely revised so that Jews could be admitted to elite universities. But Basham and someone like me would not argue with Williamson there. We are not saying that there are never evidences of racial discrimination that show up in terms of disparities. We are trying to say that America in 2020s and beyond very much has gone a long way to removing genuine barriers to students being admitted, for example, to elite universities. So we would support that. And there was discrimination in the past at elite colleges and universities in America, for example. Jews were discriminated against, and that was wrong. And that's part of why there were very few Jews at Princeton, or Harvard, or Yale, or something like this. So thank you for the applause, people who are not in the room with me. All of this, we need to roll up and say, man, such a nice round of applause, completely unplanned on my part. All of this shows us, I think, that Kevin Williamson has failed. He has failed miserably in his task of evaluating Megan Basham's argument. I don't say that simply because he and I would be on different places of the line over issues. It is fair game to debate issues and ideas and books. That is really good. Here is what I would encourage Kevin Williamson and his editors at the Dispatch to consider. And I just put this out there. I have no ability to bring this to bear on Williamson or the Dispatch, but I would encourage them to have Williamson reread the book and then do something he did not do the first time around, and that is write an actual book review. God bless you.